I never meant to come here alone. But they told me it was part of the duty, so I went down. Deeper than I thought the earth could go. The necropolis is silent when you first step in. Silent, but not empty. There's a pressure in the air, like the stone itself is waiting for you to speak. I didn't. I kept walking. My breath sounded wrong. It echoed too many times, as if there were more lungs than mine in the dark. I carried one candle. They told me it would be enough. Its flame bent as though a hand pushed against it. And then the wax began to climb upward, sliding against gravity, coating the stem like blood reversing through a vein. I froze. I thought maybe I was dizzy, maybe the air was too thin. But the candle kept bleeding upward. Somewhere behind me, 3 knocks answered the silence. Not stone falling, not footsteps. Deliberate, equal, waiting. 1, 2, 3. And then nothing. The echo didn't fade. It stayed, hanging in the chamber like a pulse that refused to end. I turned, and there it was. The mirror they never mentioned. A sheet of old bronze leaning against the far wall. The surface was blackened, but when my candle shook, it caught my reflection. Only it wasn't me. He stood there, yes, in the same robes, with the same hollow eyes. But he was turned away. His back was facing me, even though I looked straight on. I dropped the candle. The flame died with a hiss. Darkness swelled, thick as tar. I tried to pick it up, but my hands slid through something wet. Not wax. Warmer, stickier. I pulled my fingers to the weak light, and they shone red. That's when I heard it. From inside the wall, where no mouth could be, a voice pressed out through the stone. It dragged like a whisper against my ear, too close, too slow. Open for me. The words were not loud. They didn't need to be. They folded around my chest, gripped my ribs from the inside. And I realized this wasn't the first time it had spoken here. This was simply the first time it had spoken to me. They told me it would begin in the Basilica, not below. That the ceremony of duty always starts in the light before descending into the dark. So I stood beneath the dome of St. Peter's, my breath catching in that ocean of stone and glass. I had been there before, as a visitor, as a pilgrim. But never as one expected to walk where tourists never go. I remember the silence of the Basilica before dawn. No pilgrims, no cameras, no guides. Just the echo of my steps and the faint drip of wax from the vigil lamps. That's where I first saw him, Cardinal Marcus Keller. They say his family line stretches back centuries, and you can believe it in the way he carries himself. His robes seemed heavier than mine, not just with fabric, but with secrets. He studied me for a long moment before he spoke. "You came from America." His voice was measured, low. "Yes, Your Eminence." My own voice cracked in the vast chamber. "Good," he said. "Sometimes it takes distance to see clearly. You'll learn to see clearly here." He turned away before I could answer. Beside him stood Father Peter Novak. Younger, though older than me, his hands carried the calmness of someone who had repeated the same ritual too many times. He nodded without smiling. Behind them was Archdeacon Victor Radu, holding a leather case bound with brass. He never looked at me, not once. His gaze was always downward, as though the floor carried words he alone could read. A woman's step echoed from the shadows, a nun, her veil sharp against the dim light. Sister Maria Petrovich. She carried a lantern. I felt her eyes before I saw them, flat and unwavering, like the icons that stared down from the ceilings. And behind them, 2 more. Father Arun Rajan, eyes darting, lips moving with silent prayers, and Brother Elias Richter, already scribbling in a book as if the night had begun long before I arrived. Keller raised a hand. The others fell still. His words came like a verdict. "There are rules," he said. "Without them, there is no guard. Without the guard, there is no seal. And without the seal, there is no world left worth guarding." He stepped closer. I smelled incense clinging to his robes, but underneath it was something metallic. Iron. "The first rule," he said, "is this. You do not look into the mirror of bronze. It reflects what should not be seen." His eyes stayed on me. I nodded, though I wanted to ask where the mirror even was. "The second rule. You light the candles and you replace them. Always at the 7th hour after the bell, never sooner, never later." I nodded again. His voice seemed to fall heavier with each word. "The third rule. The box with the red cross is not yours to open. It has not been opened since the seal was bound. Do not be the first." The air seemed colder. The Basilica's silence closed tighter around us. "The fourth rule. If you hear your name spoken from the walls, you do not answer, no matter who it sounds like." Arun swallowed audibly at that. I felt my own chest tighten. "And the fifth rule." Keller let the silence stretch until it was unbearable. "You write every night. You do not stop. You record what you see, what you hear, what you feel. Leave nothing out. The record is your proof you remain. The record is your chain to the duty." He stopped speaking. The rules hung between us like chains themselves. I nodded once more. Too quickly, maybe. My throat was dry. Peter stepped forward. "We'll take him down now," he said quietly. Keller didn't nod, didn't bless me. He just turned away, the folds of his robes vanishing into shadow. So they led me down, past the tourists' halls, past the gates locked with iron. The marble gave way to stone, and then to rougher stone, and then to the tomb air of the necropolis. I had walked there once as a visitor. They had told us stories of Peter's grave, of the martyrs, of Christian history carved in dust. But this path was not for visitors. This path bent away from the tour lights, away from the guide's rehearsed words. Here the air pressed close, damp, tinged with rust and mold. Every footstep sounded like a drumbeat. The deeper we went, the less the Basilica seemed real. I thought of America then, of home, of streets where lamps hummed and cars broke the silence. They felt like memories from someone else's life. Arun whispered behind me, "Do you believe it?" I looked back. "What?" "The rules," he said. His eyes flickered in the lantern light. "Do you think they're just symbols?" Peter's voice cut sharp. "Quiet." Elias scribbled something without looking up. Maria's lantern swayed. Victor's case clinked softly with each step. I told myself it was all symbolic. That was what my professors had said when we studied rituals. Rules to focus the mind, not to bind something real. I wanted to believe that. I needed to. But the knocks from the hook still echoed in my skull. And the candle's blood, I could still smell it on my hands. The descent wound deeper. The lanterns hissed as if the air itself resented flame. My lungs fought for rhythm. Each breath tasted of wet stone and old ash. I could hear water drip, but the floor was dry beneath our boots. Elias paused to scribble again, his quill scratching like an insect trapped between glass panes. He didn't look up when Peter motioned him on. Maria lifted her lantern toward a narrow door. Its wood was dark, almost black, carved with symbols half erased by centuries. I recognized none of them. Victor stepped forward, slid a key from his case, and unlocked the iron latch. The noise was too loud, like the whole necropolis winced at once. We entered the chamber. It wasn't large, stone walls pressed close, ceiling low enough that Keller bowed his head. At the center stood a table with 5 candles, each guttering though there was no draft. Beside it, resting against the wall, leaned the bronze mirror, covered in dust, waiting. I remembered the first rule before I even thought of looking. I kept my eyes down, locked on the cracks in the stone floor. Peter spoke softly. "This is where you'll keep watch." His voice did not rise above the flame. "You'll sit at the table. You'll write. When the 7th hour strikes, you'll change the candles. If they die early, you light them again, but you do not change them. Do you understand?" I nodded. My throat was tight. Arun swallowed audibly. "What if he hears the voice?" Victor's head turned slightly. "Then he remembers the 4th rule." Peter's eyes flicked to me. "And he keeps silent." The weight of silence pressed harder than the rules. I took the chair. The stone beneath felt warmer than it should. The table was scarred with marks like nails dragged deep. A leather-bound journal lay open before me, pages yellow, edges curled. The first entries weren't mine. They belonged to men before me. Different languages, different hands. The same closing line scrawled again and again. Still here. Elias leaned over my shoulder, recording the time of my arrival. He didn't look at me. He never did. The 5th rule gnawed louder now. Write everything. Leave nothing out. The chain to the duty. I set the quill to paper. My hand shook. Ink bled into the page like veins. I wrote the time, the names, the rules, the weight of the air. Even now I can see the line forming, black on yellow. "My name is John Anderson. I begin my watch." Keller's shadow moved. He had not spoken since the rules. He reached for one candle, pinched the flame barehanded, and relit it without flint or taper. "The seal is older than your country," he said. "Older than you can measure. Do not think it fears you. You should fear it." He turned and left. The others followed. Maria's lantern was the last to vanish. For a moment, the chamber belonged only to me and the sound of my pen scratching. I told myself again it was symbolic. A rite, nothing more. But the knocks had followed me here. I could feel them under the chair, pulsing against my spine. And the mirror, though I refused to look, burned at the edge of my vision, daring me to break the first rule. I thought the silence would steady me. But silence is never empty down here. It bends. It waits. I kept my eyes fixed on the journal, on the ink bleeding across the page. My hand shook less when I wrote. That's what I told myself. But the mirror was still there, in the corner of my vision. Every time the flame guttered, I swore it shifted closer. I didn't look. Rule 1 was clear. Still, something made me raise my eyes. Just for a second. Just enough for the bronze to catch me. I saw myself. Robes, pale face, the candle shaking in my hand. But he wasn't looking back at me. His back was turned. I froze. The quill snapped in my hand. Ink splattered across the page. When I blinked, it was gone. Just me again. Just the mirror. I told myself it was the light, the angle, a trick of shadow. I told myself anything I could. Peter noticed the ink on my hand. "Keep writing," he said. I forced the quill back to the page, but my words shook into scribbles. That's when I heard it. My name. Low. Drawn out. Sliding along the wall like breath through stone. John. I froze. My pulse hammered so hard the candle flame bent with each beat. Arun's head snapped up. "Did you hear that?" His voice cracked. Peter frowned. "Hear what?" Arun's eyes darted to me. "He said—" Peter cut him off. "Nothing was said." Elias just wrote, pen scratching fast, not looking up once. The voice came again, closer. John. It sounded like my father, the exact tone. the syllables heavy with the same weight I remembered as a boy. I bit my tongue till blood filled my mouth. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Rule 4. A rune shifted closer. It called his name. You can't pretend. Peter slammed his palm on the table. Rule 4. Do not answer. Do not speak. The candle hissed. Wax dripped, but it climbed back up the stem like a snake swallowing itself. I forced my voice out, thin and shaking. It sounded like him. Peter leaned closer. His breath smelled of iron. That's how it works. It knows the shape of your heart. He straightened. Ignore it. I nodded too quickly. My chest hurt from holding the words in. The voice slid away, fading into the stone. For a moment I thought maybe I had passed the test, but then Elias finally looked up. His eyes were empty. He wrote one word on his page and turned it toward me. Answered. My stomach dropped. I hadn't spoken. I hadn't. But the ink spelled it out anyway. Arun whispered again. He's wrong. You didn't say anything. Peter snapped back. Silence! Victor's voice broke in from the corner. He rarely spoke, but now he did. The seal bends truth. That is its nature. I shivered. His face never left the ground. I tried to keep writing. My hand cramped, black lines twisting. The journal's earlier pages bled at the edges, as if ink seeped backward in time. The mirror pulsed with light, though no flame touched it. I saw the reflection again. My back, always turned, always walking away. This time it lifted a hand, as if beckoning. I dropped the quill. The chamber swallowed sound. Every drip of wax, every shift of breath was too loud, too sharp. And still, beneath it, the echo of my name lingered. Not from the wall now, from the mirror. John. I gripped the journal hard enough to tear the binding. I wrote the rule down in jagged letters. Rule 4. Do not answer. Ink smeared across my palms, across the page, across the desk. Arun stared at me, lips moving with a prayer. Peter's jaw locked tight. Elias kept scratching with his pen, faster and faster. Victor finally lifted his head. His eyes were bloodshot, unfocused. The rules hold only as long as you believe them. The mirror flickered. My reflection's shoulders rose and fell with breath I hadn't taken. And in the silence, I heard the 3 knocks again. 1, 2, 3. Waiting for me to break. The air grew heavier with each breath. Damp stone pressed against my skin. I tried to steady myself, to explain the sound away. Maybe it was the wind moving through the tunnels, carrying syllables that only resembled my name. I clung to the thought, repeating it in my head like a prayer. It's air. Just air. Nothing more. But the pressure in my ears told me otherwise. The sound had weight. Words shouldn't weigh anything, but these did. Arun shifted again, his rosary beads clinking faintly. John, you have to tell him what you heard. I shook my head, sharp, desperate. No. If I say it, it makes it real. Peter's eyes flicked toward me, cold as iron. You keep silent. That's the rule. Say nothing. Write it, but don't speak it. My hand moved to the journal automatically. The quill scratched the page with trembling strokes. It called me again. The mirror flared in the corner. This time, I didn't even raise my head. I felt its glow on my face, warm and sick like fever. I whispered to myself, over and over. It's the angle. Just the angle. Light bends. Reflections bend. It isn't real. But my reflection shifted even in the words of my denial. Shoulders twisting, head tilting away. I slammed the journal shut. Elias finally spoke, his voice thin and detached. Don't close it. The record must continue. I opened it again with shaking hands. The pages rustled like dry leaves. The silence that followed was worse than the voice. Every scrape of pen, every breath seemed wrong. Then another sound began, a soft drip. Not water, too thick. I raised the candle. Red drops slid down the stone wall, oozing from cracks as though the chamber itself bled. Arun gagged. That's blood. Dear God. Peter didn't flinch. Ink. It's ink. The stones leak it sometimes. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the copper taste in my mouth said otherwise. Victor finally stepped forward, his brass case clutched like armor. Ignore the illusions. Write them. Do not believe them. His words barely reached me. The chamber pulsed like a lung around us, breathing in and out. The voice returned, not from the mirror, not from the wall, but from directly behind me. John. I spun so fast the candle almost died. Nothing. Only the dark stretching back into the necropolis. But the echo didn't fade. It sank into the bones of the chamber, rattling the iron in the hinges. Peter grabbed my wrist, squeezing hard enough to bruise. Do not answer. I pulled away, breath shuddering. I didn't. I won't. Arun stepped forward, his eyes wide. What if the rules aren't enough? What if it already knows him? Peter's jaw locked. Then he writes. That's all he can do. Elias scribbled furiously. His pen tore through the paper. I glanced at the word he had just carved. Faltering. The letters bled like cuts in flesh. The mirror shifted again. I didn't see it move, I just knew it wasn't where it had been. Closer now. The bronze caught the candlelight and spilled it wrong across the floor, making the cracks look like open mouths. I closed my eyes. My chest heaved. This is physics, reflection, echo. My mind is tired, that's all. But the knocks came again. 3, sharp, final, and the chamber seemed to wait for me to fail. Arun's whisper cut through the silence. If it knows your name, it already has a hold. Maybe speaking back isn't the worst. Peter's head snapped toward him. Stop. Arun's voice trembled. You don't understand. I've heard it too. I hear it every night. He looked at me, desperate. Don't you hear it? I clenched the journal tighter. Yes. The admission felt like betrayal. The air shifted instantly. The candle guttered. The mirror's surface rippled like liquid. Victor hissed under his breath. He acknowledged it. Peter barked a prayer, Latin spilling from his lips like a weapon. The chamber vibrated. The blood on the walls shivered, sliding back into the cracks. But the voice didn't leave. It only laughed, soft and perfect, like a child repeating a prayer. John. I bent over the journal, forcing ink onto the page, hand tearing through parchment. Rule 4. Do not answer. Rule 4. Do not answer. My handwriting fractured, letters split. Some lines weren't mine at all. A second hand had joined me, jagged and sharp, writing words I didn't know. I ripped the quill away. The page still filled. Arun backed toward the door. We shouldn't be here. It's awake. Peter stood like iron, his voice hard. It's always awake. That's why we are here. Victor clutched his case tighter. Elias just wrote, head bowed, pen breaking through paper. And me, I kept hearing the voice. Not outside anymore, not behind me, but inside. It whispered with every heartbeat, every exhale. My name. Over and over. And I realized then, it wasn't trying to be answered. It was waiting. It wanted me to doubt the rules, to break them without even speaking. The first crack is not in the voice. The first crack is in belief. And mine was breaking. The archives are never silent. Even when the doors seal shut and the torches dim, the place breathes. Pages shift without touch. Parchment crackles with the weight of centuries. I walked between the endless shelves, candle smoke curling against the vaulted ceiling. My steps rang too loud on the marble floor. It felt like trespassing. Victor led the way, his brass case clutched close. He didn't speak. He only unlocked doors one after another until we reached the chamber reserved for records that don't exist. The lock groaned. The air changed. Cold, metallic. Sharp, like iron scraped against stone. Inside, a desk, a single chair, a chest, stacked with ledgers so heavy their leather bindings cracked under the strain. Peter set a book before me, thick as a brick. His voice was low. "Read. You'll see you're not the first." The cover creaked open. The pages were brittle, each line written by hands older than mine. At first it was Latin, then German, then Italian, then English. Different centuries, different voices, all the same pattern, all ending with a line I knew already. Still here. I turned further, and then I saw it, the name scrawled at the top. The 72nd Watcher. The words blurred, my chest tightened, because the things he described were mine. The mirror, the blood on the walls, the voice that called by name. He wrote it as if he had been in the room with me last night. I whispered the words without meaning to. "This is me." Arun leaned close, his eyes wide. "It's all the same." Peter's jaw clenched. He didn't deny it, he just watched me read. Further down the page, the rules appeared again, but not as protections, not as barriers. The entries said it clearly. The rules feed it. The first rule blinds the eye, but the mirror sees for it. The second rule gives it the rhythm of time. The third starves it until hunger bends the soul. The fourth keeps its name alive in the air. The fifth binds the chain between keeper and beast. I gripped the desk so hard my knuckles burned. My mouth was dry. They're not rules to stop it. They're rules to keep it alive. Peter said nothing. Victor didn't move. Arun crossed himself, lips trembling. The silence broke when the door opened. Keller stepped in. The red of his robes looked darker in the archive light, as if dipped in something thicker than dye. He watched me with those ancient eyes, and for the first time, he smiled. "Now you understand." I rose too fast. The chair screeched against stone. "You lied. You told me it was duty, protection, but it's feeding." Keller stepped closer. His voice filled the chamber without rising. "You are not the first to think yourself clever. Every keeper believes the rules are chains for the monster, but they are chains for you. They bind you to the office. They remind you of your place." My throat ached. Why keep it alive? Why not destroy it? His eyes narrowed. Because it cannot be destroyed, and because it grants what no prayer, no crown, no sword can grant. He leaned closer, the scent of incense laced with rust. Power. The word slammed into me harder than the voice in the chamber. I stepped back, shaking my head, but Keller's smile didn't falter. His words dragged through me like a blade. He spread his hands, robes falling heavy. Centuries ago, when Rome bled itself dry, when emperors fell and nations scattered, we stood at the brink. We had faith, yes, but faith alone does not command kings. Faith alone does not silence armies. So we bargained. We gave it breath, and it gave us reach. My knees weakened. I grabbed the desk to keep from falling. The candle beside me flared, though no wind touched it, and he kept speaking. Every rule keeps the rhythm alive. Every keeper ensures the pact endures. Your journal is not confession, it is contract. Every stroke of ink feeds it. Every silence binds it. Arun shook his head violently, No. This is corruption. This isn't the church. Keller's voice snapped like thunder. The church is what survives. Ideals die. Power endures. You think God preserved us with mercy? No. He preserved us with strength. With this. He pointed at the ledger, at the words still here. My breath caught. The candle flickered, though no draft moved. How many? His smile widened. 73. With you, 74. Each one thought himself different. Each one bent. Each one wrote. He leaned close enough for me to see the veins in his eyes. And each one still feeds it. The chamber felt smaller. My pulse hammered against my ribs. I tried to believe it was lies, manipulation, a test of loyalty. But the book in my hands told me otherwise. The ink of centuries didn't lie. The mirror didn't lie. The voice calling my name didn't lie. It wasn't bound because of us. It was alive because of us. And now it knew me. The Capella Paolina was never meant for eyes like mine. Hidden behind locked doors, far from pilgrims, its walls carried paintings of judgment and salvation. But that night, the air inside held only dread. We entered at midnight. The candles had already been lit, but their flames bent downward, dripping wax toward the ceiling instead of the floor. The silence lasted only a breath. Then the floor itself began to murmur. Low voices, hundreds of them, layered in prayer. They rose from beneath the stone tiles as if the earth had gathered its own congregation. I froze. My pen slipped from my fingers. The voices grew louder, a chorus in languages I couldn't understand, but each word pressed against my chest like a hammer. Arun stumbled back. It's under us. Peter barked over the din. Hold the line! Keep the rules! The rules? They felt like ash now. The stone walls darkened. Moisture spread, streaking downward. But the streaks weren't water. They glistened deep red. The chapel bled. The iron tang flooded my nose, coating my tongue until I gagged. Maria raised her lantern, but the glass cracked with heat. Blood smeared across her veil. She didn't flinch. Elias wrote furiously, eyes empty, the ink tearing through parchment. Each line he carved bled black as though his pen pierced flesh. The mirror stood at the altar. For a breath it was whole, then the surface fractured with a shriek like shattering bone. Splinters flew, scattering across the chapel. Each shard reflected me, but each face was wrong, smiling, screaming, whispering, weeping. 100 Johns, none of them mine. I staggered back. Make it stop! Victor's voice cut through, strained. Seal it! Hold the chant! Peter shouted prayers, but the words twisted, breaking in his throat. The voices below drowned him out, chanting faster, deeper, mocking his syllables. The candles flared. Their flames bent into spirals, burning against gravity. Smoke curled to the ground. The heat pressed against my skull until I thought bone would crack. Then a sound tore through everything. The 3 knocks. But this time, multiplied. A storm of pounding fists from below. Arun screamed, "It's rising!" Peter's voice snapped back. Stay firm, close it, keep the rules! But the rules had never felt weaker. The floor buckled. Between the tiles, light seeped upward. Not holy light, but crimson, thick as molten iron. Shadows twisted out of it, forming shapes too large for the chapel. The voices became laughter, then sobbing, then laughter again. Too perfect, too human, too many. I dropped to my knees, clutching the journal. My pen carved the words without command. Rule 1, Rule 2, Rule 3, Rule 4, Rule 5. Blood seeped into the pages, blurring every line. The book pulsed as if it had a heartbeat. The mirror shards trembled. Each John inside them opened his mouth in unison, and they all spoke my name. John. My throat locked. My heart raced so fast it felt like it would tear itself free. Peter shouted again, "Shut it down! Close the seal!" Victor slammed his brass case onto the altar, spilling relics, bones, scraps of parchment, rings of iron etched with symbols. He arranged them with shaking hands, chanting words that broke apart in his mouth. But the ground answered with another surge of pounding. The chapel shuddered. Plaster rained from the ceiling. Candles hissed as their flames reversed, burning downward into wax that refused to melt. Arun collapsed, sobbing into his hands. "We can't stop it! We can't!" Peter struck him across the face. "Stand! The rules hold if we hold them!" But the words rang hollow. Even he sounded afraid. I lifted my eyes to the shards. One reflection grinned wide, teeth too many for a human mouth. Another bled from the eyes, tears carving down cheeks like rivers of ink. Another mouthed silent prayers, lips forming words I couldn't hear but somehow knew were mine. They leaned closer, closer, until I thought they'd climb through the glass. The chorus reached a peak. Prayers, screams, knocks, laughter, all one sound. The chapel's air boiled. Blood dripped from the frescoes above. Christ's painted face wept crimson. I clutched my head, ears ringing. "Stop!" The shards all answered at once. "Feed us." The seal had broken, and something stepped through. The chapel shook as if the foundations of the Vatican itself were breaking apart. Stone dust rained down in clouds. The air churned with heat and iron, stinking of rust, blood, and smoke. I tried to breathe, but the air clawed its way into my lungs. Peter shouted, voice raw, "Form the circle! Keep the seal!" Victor scrambled to retrieve his relics, but the iron rings rolled from his grasp and clanged across the floor, vibrating with each knock from below. Arun clutched the wall, trembling. "It's too strong! We can't hold it!" Peter shoved him forward. "Stand! You are sworn!" The prayers beneath the floor grew louder, dozens of voices overlapping, all in different tongues, yet perfectly synchronized. It wasn't prayer anymore. It was mockery. They mimicked psalms, twisted them, laughing between the verses. I heard my own voice among them, clear, familiar, laughing at me. The frescoes above warped in the heat. Saints bent their heads, not in blessing, but in grief. Blood streamed from their painted eyes. The mirror shards rattled across the stones, pulling together. I watched in horror as they rose, floating in the air, forming a jagged circle. Each piece held a different John, one whispering, one laughing, one screaming for help. Their mouths opened in unison. "Feed us." Elias collapsed to his knees, scribbling faster, his quill cutting deep gouges into paper that wasn't thick enough to hold ink anymore. He bled from his fingertips where the nib tore his skin, but he didn't stop. "Still here. Still here. Still here." Maria raised her lantern, her voice breaking into chant. But her words warped halfway, turning into a language none of us knew. Her throat convulsed, sounds scraping raw. She didn't stop. She couldn't. The ground split. A fissure cracked across the chapel, bleeding crimson light. Heat blasted upward, carrying a stench of sulfur so heavy I gagged. From the fissure, a shape pressed upward, not formed, not whole, something in between smoke and flesh. It stretched, bending the air, taller than the chapel itself. The voices swelled until the frescoes trembled and flakes of paint fell like ash. Peter screamed, "Close it! Seal it now!" Victor slammed his brass case shut, muttering words that broke apart as fast as he spoke them. Arun stumbled toward the altar, clutching a cross, his voice shaking. "In the name of the Father!" The cross blackened in his hand. He dropped it with a scream. "It burns! It burns!" The candles writhed, flames coiling into serpents of fire that bit at the air. Smoke thickened at ground level, rolling in waves, choking us. My journal shook in my hands. I tried to write, but the ink spread across the page before my nib touched it, words forming without me. "Still here! Still here!" I shouted. "I didn't write that!" But the page bled with more. A second hand controlled it now. The entity's shadow climbed the chapel walls. Its voice came in fragments, broken across every tongue in the room. "I am many. I am hunger. I am already within you." The shards of mirror slammed together, forming a jagged ring of glass. From it, one of the Johns stepped forward. Not me, but close. Too close. His smile stretched until his face split. Blood spilled, but he kept grinning. He whispered with my own voice. "Open." I stumbled back. Peter grabbed me by the collar. "Do not listen! Keep the rules!" My chest heaved. "The rules feed it! They don't stop it!" Peter's eyes widened. For the first time I saw doubt there. His grip faltered. Arun collapsed to his knees, sobbing. "It's too late. It's already here." The fissure split wider. A hand rose, if you could call it that. Fingers stretched like broken spires, glowing red within as if filled with molten iron. Each movement screamed like metal tearing. The chapel shook under its weight. The fresco of Christ above the altar split down the middle. His painted face cracked, the eyes weeping streams of blood that fell onto the altar. Victor's relics melted into pools of metal. Maria's lantern shattered in her hands, flames swallowing her veil. She didn't scream. She just kept chanting words that weren't her own. Elias gouged the journal so deeply his nails tore away, but he wrote on. "Still here, still here." The entity's head pushed through the fissure, faceless at first, then forming features stolen from every reflection. My face, Peter's face, Arun's face, all layered atop each other, shifting with every blink. It spoke with every voice at once, yet every word carried the same meaning. Open, feed, remain. The sound crushed me. My bones vibrated. My blood burned. I tried to pray, but no words came. The journal flared, brighter than the candles, pages curling with heat. I dropped it. The entity leaned forward, filling the chapel with its weight. Its laughter blended with the hundreds below. Perfect, flawless, endless. Still here. I woke to stone, cold, damp, pressing against my cheek. For a moment I thought I was still in the chapel, but the air was different. Still heavy, but quieter. When I opened my eyes, the walls told me where I was. Sant'Uffizio, the old tribunal halls, the Inquisition's shadow, and I was inside one of its cells. The light filtered weak through a slit high above, barely enough to shape the outlines of the room. Iron bars crossed the doorway, though no guard stood watch. I sat up slow, ribs aching, head ringing. My clothes were stiff with dried blood, though I couldn't tell if it was mine. The chapel, the voices, the mirror, it all rushed back, and I staggered as if the memories themselves had weight. I called out once. "Peter?" No answer. "Arun?" Only silence. Elias, Victor, Maria, gone. Whether dead, taken, or worse, I don't know. The silence of the cell swallowed every name I spoke. My hands shook as I searched. On the floor, a journal waited, the same as before. Different, yet the same. Bound in leather, pages yellow, edges curled. My fingers brushed the cover and I knew. It was mine now. I opened it. The first page stared back, blank, waiting. I wrote with hands that could barely grip the quill. Each letter dragged across the page like carving into stone. I wrote because the fifth rule demanded it, and because if I didn't, I knew the silence would not remain silent. The memory of the chapel clung to me, the blood sweating from walls, the faces in the shards, the laughter filling every corner. But here the sound was softer, muted, until it wasn't. 3 knocks. 1, 2, 3. They came from beneath the stone floor, not loud, not urgent, just steady, waiting. I froze. The sound from the hook, the same rhythm. It hadn't ended in the chapel. It never ends. I forced myself to keep writing. My ink bled into the page, words trembling. Still here. I wanted to deny it, but the truth pressed close. I am only the next in line. Not chosen, not spared, just next. Every keeper before me had written these same words, and every one still fed the chain. I pressed the quill hard, the tip cutting into parchment. I thought the rules would save us. I thought faith would hold. But the rules were never for us. They were for it. The silence thickened after I wrote it, like the walls themselves leaned closer to listen. I thought of Keller's words: power, burden, survival. I wanted to scream that he was wrong, that the church should have been built on truth, but the sound of the knocks beat steady under me. They were not lies, they were proof. 1, 2, 3. Always waiting. The candle in the corner guttered, though I hadn't lit it. Flame bent sideways, shadows crawling like worms across the wall. I didn't move. I didn't look at the mirror leaning in the far corner. I knew better. I just wrote. The weight of it all crushed me. My faith bent, cracked. But I kept writing because silence is worse. Silence invites it closer. So I wrote every detail: the Basilica, the necropolis, the rules, the chapel, the faces in the shards, the hand rising from the fissure. I wrote until the ink ran, then dipped again, forcing every image onto the page as if that would keep it caged. It doesn't matter. It always comes back. The journal is not record. It is contract. I paused only once. My hand cramped. The knocks returned, closer. 1, 2, 3. John. I bit my tongue, swallowed blood, and wrote faster. Rule 4. Do not answer. Even here, even now. The hours slipped without measure. The slit of light dimmed. The walls felt narrower, pressing against my ribs. Still I wrote. Still I signed my name again and again, as though proof of being alive meant more than breath. And maybe it does, because the ledger of the 72nd ended with the same words. And so will mine. Still here. The truth sits like lead in my chest. I am not the end. I am not salvation. I am link 74 in a chain that will never break. And when I am gone, someone else will wake in this cell, hear the knocks, and write the same words. The cycle doesn't stop. It feeds. Always feeds. The candle sputtered. The knocks echoed once more. 1, 2, 3, waiting for the next page. I understand it now. The fifth rule was never about record, never about memory. It isn't history they want. It's proof of life. Every line is a signal. Every night the journal is filled, it tells the thing below. I'm still here. I still serve. I still feed. That's why silence is dangerous. That's why the pen is as heavy as any chain. I wanted to believe I was writing for others, leaving truth in words, saving whoever came after me. But the truth is simpler, crueler. The journal doesn't save us. It saves it. And when the writing stops, when the silence stretches too long, it will know. It will rise. It will choose another. The rules are not commandments. They're hunger. Rituals of feeding disguised as duty. I see that now. I can't pretend anymore. I can't pray it away. I can only write. I hear the knocks again, soft, patient. 1, 2, 3. They wait for the page to turn, and I turn it, because I'm afraid of what waits if I don't. If you find these words, it means the chain still holds. It means I'm still feeding it. But one day my ink will run out. My hand will stop. My silence will betray me. And it will move on. I wish I could tell you there's a way out. There isn't. The chain does not break. The duty never ends. So this is the only truth I can leave. If you take this journal, if you step into this duty, remember the 5th rule above all others. Don't miss a night. Don't stop the words. Don't believe the silence will protect you. Because silence is invitation. Silence is surrender. And when you stop writing, it will know.